Nobody knew how long she'd been lying there, covered in dirt, wrapped in rags, looking more like something buried and dug up than something still breathing. Thomas Greaves almost rode past her. He wasn't the type to go looking for ghosts. He almost didn't stop, and if he hadn't, she'd be a story the wind forgot. Not anymore. Not since the world had taken everything he ever prayed for. His wife, his boy, his reason. These days, Thomas didn't pray. He fixed fences. He rode boundaries. He stayed out of town and out of people's business. But that afternoon, something was off. The sun was cruel, heavy in the sky. The wind blew dry and hot, but carried no sound, no bird, no rustling brush, just silence, and that feeling, the kind that gets under a man's skin before he even knows why. He spotted it near the tree line, a shape that didn't belong. At first glance, just a trash heap, maybe old blankets or busted supplies tossed out by some passing wagon. But his horse shied, snorted, and backed away. Thomas dismounted, walked closer. The stench hit first, sweat, blood, something rotting beneath the summer heat. Then it moved, a twitch, a whimper. He knelt, one hand on his revolver, the other lifting a corner of the filth. Underneath, curled up and shaking, was a girl. She looked about 20, maybe less, her face swollen on one side, lip split, dress shredded. Dirt crusted into her skin like it belonged there. One eye was nearly shut, the other just stared past him like he didn't matter. "Please, don't touch me." The words were dry, broken, but they hit harder than a bullet. Thomas didn't speak. He didn't flinch. He just stared at her for a long time, taking in the bruises, the ribs pressing through her skin, the way her fingers clung to the blanket like it was her last line of defense. He could have left her. No one would have blamed him. Hell, no one would have even known, but he didn't. He took off his coat, wrapped it around her shaking body, and lifted her gently into his arms. She didn't fight, didn't cry. She just sagged into his chest like a broken thing, long past the point of screaming. The ride back to his cabin was dead quiet, not a word, just the creaking leather and the distant caw of a crow somewhere far off. But in that silence, Thomas felt something stir, something he thought had died a long time ago. She didn't say another word, but he knew. Whatever had happened to her, it was bad, and whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be any easier. Thomas didn't ask her anything that first night, didn't ask where she came from, what happened, or who she was running from. Hell, he didn't even ask her name. He just laid her down in the old back room, the one that used to smell like fresh biscuits and lavender soap. Now it just smelled like dust and years. He lit a lantern, left it by the door, and told her there was water and food on the table. Then he walked out and shut the door soft. Next morning, the food was untouched, water barely touched, and she hadn't moved from that corner, still clutching the blanket like it was a shield, eyes wide open, watching the ceiling like it might fall in on her. Thomas didn't push. He made eggs, ate his in silence, left the rest on the stove, covered. Second night, same thing. By the third morning, she'd taken a sip of water, that was all. But it was something, like the first spark in a long dead fire. Thomas didn't say much, and he wasn't good with words no more, but he found his old harmonica in the drawer. Used to play it when his boy was small, just a few notes by the fireplace, nothing fancy. Figured it might make the place feel less like a grave. He played that night, low and slow. She didn't move, didn't speak, but her breathing evened out. Her jaw twitched, then her hand moved, just barely, but it was enough. And when he finished, and he swore he saw her eyes close for the first time. Next day, she ate half a biscuit, looked at him when he brought in fresh water. Didn't speak, but didn't flinch either. Progress? Small, quiet, but it was real. And then, just as things started to feel almost normal, she finally said something. It wasn't much, but it changed everything. Now listen close, because what she said next is where the whole damn story turns. But what she said next, nobody could have seen coming. She looked at him, really looked. First time since he found her. Then, voice low like gravel, she said they were hunting animals. But they caught me instead. That was it. Just that. 7 words, but Thomas felt it all. The fear, the dirt, the nights alone out there with things worse than coyotes. He'd seen what men were capable of. He'd done things himself he didn't talk about. But this was different. He didn't press her for more. Didn't need to. He could read enough between the bruises. That same week, he started noticing things. Boot prints outside the barn that didn't match his. Fence wire freshly cut. A crow tied by its feet and nailed to his fence post. Warning, one night, he spotted a figure on the ridge, just standing, watching the cabin. When he grabbed his rifle and stepped out, it was gone. That next morning, he found his dog dead, poisoned. She didn't cry, just sat in the rocking chair, wrapped in that old blanket, hands clenched white. "They know I'm here," she whispered. Thomas didn't say a word. He cleaned the rifle, sharpened the axe, rode into Lead, the nearest town, and spoke to the sheriff. An old war buddy, trustworthy. They got a description, put out word, but out here, law moved slow, too slow. So Thomas built the fire higher that night, moved her bed closer to the hearth, sat with his rifle across his lap and eyes never leaving the door. Because when you live out here long enough, you learn one thing real fast. If you wait on the law to come save you, you better also be waiting on a coffin. And if this kind of story has kept you leaning in so far, maybe give that subscribe button a little click. Ain't no sheriff riding to rescue, but it sure helps keep stories like this alive. Now hold tight, because in the next chapter, these devils ain't just watching no more. Trouble wasn't done with them yet. They're coming through the door. It happened just after sunset. The sky was still glowing orange, but the shadows were getting bold. Thomas was splitting kindling out back when he heard it. That sound no rancher ever mistakes. Hooves, 3 horses, slow, intentional. He stepped out from behind the shed, and there they were, 3 men, dusty, tall in the saddle, eyes mean and hungry. No words, no greetings, just the kind of silence that makes your stomach twist. The one in the middle, face half covered with a rag, spit and pointed. "We're here for what's ours." Thomas didn't blink, just gripped the axe a little tighter. Inside the cabin, she heard them too, heard the boots hit the porch, the creak of the floorboards, the doorknob turning. She didn't scream. She didn't hide. Instead, she grabbed the old shotgun Thomas kept by the window. He had shown her how to hold it, how to brace, just in case. Well, the case was here. The door opened. One of the men stepped inside, cocky like he'd done this a dozen times before. She pulled the trigger. The blast shook the room, dropped him like a sack of wheat. The others outside froze. That's when Thomas moved. Uncomo. He came from the side, swung the axe straight into the second man's gut before the fella even got off his horse. The third tried to run, didn't get far. A bullet from Thomas's sidearm took him clean in the leg. When the dust settled, one was dead, one unconscious, and one screaming like a trapped coyote. Thomas tied them up, dragged them behind the cabin, and rode to Lead by morning. Sheriff took the bodies. No questions, just a nod. A few days later, a poster came down off the wall at the general store. 3 names, 3 faces, all marked captured. Justice doesn't ride a white horse out here. Sometimes it rocks on a porch with a shotgun in its lap. The cabin was quiet again. Not the kind of silence that feels like waiting for trouble. The other kind. The kind that makes you breathe a little deeper, sit a little longer, hear your own heartbeat without fear chasing it. Thomas didn't say much after what happened. Neither did she. But something changed. You could see it. In the way she carried herself. The way she started cooking a little in the mornings, cleaning out the old shelves, putting flowers by the window from the creek bed out back. She still didn't talk about what happened. And he didn't ask. But one evening, as the sun dipped low and the fire crackled, she sat beside him, close but not too close. Her hair clean, her skin not bruised anymore. And for the first time, she smiled. Not forced, not polite, just real. You ever seen someone smile like that, like it took them years to remember how? She looked at him and said, "You didn't save me, but you stayed." That was it. That was all he needed. He took her hand, rough, calloused, warm. She didn't pull away. Weeks passed, then months. Folks in town started calling her Clara Greaves, even though no one ever saw a wedding dress. Didn't matter. Out here, names come from who you choose to stand beside, and she chose him every single day. Funny how a broken girl and a broken man built something whole. You ever think about that? How sometimes what's broken in you finds its match in someone else, and together it just fits. Makes you wonder, how many folks out there just need someone who won't walk away? And if this story hit you in the chest even a little, maybe tap that like button, maybe subscribe. There's more stories out here like Thomas and Clara. Stories about grit, about healing, about how love ain't always loud, but when it's real, it doesn't need to be. So tell me this, you ever stayed when it was easier to leave, or better yet, has someone ever stayed for you?